to everyone who has tuned in to this video. I truly appreciate you. And if you're new here and you enjoy whispered true crime, please consider subscribing to the channel. I post 2 times a week, on Monday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I recommend using headphones if you would like to hear the gentle mic brushing. Now, before we get started, please make sure that you are subscribed, and please leave it a like if you don't mind. So, today's case is considered the worst massacre in the history of Australia. This case took place in 1996 in a town called Port Arthur in Tasmania, Australia. And this horrific crime was committed by a man named Martin Bryant. Now, after you have finished watching this video, if you're interested in more, there is a movie that I watched on Hulu, which is based on this true case, and it is called Nitram, which is Martin spelled backwards. I think it is fairly accurate and really brings it to life, but it leaves out all the violence. You assume the violence, but it doesn't show you. So anyway, let's get into it. So, Martin Bryant was born in a town called Hobart in Tasmania, Australia, in 1967. He had 2 parents. Their names were Maurice, his father, and Carlene was his mother. And he also had a younger sister. According to his mother, the first year of his life was basically normal. The only thing that was a little different was he was not the type of baby that had any interest in cuddling or any real physical attachment. But that all changed when he was 16 months and he had learned how to walk and run. At that young age, he actually began escaping from the house. And it was happening all the time. They would find him in very strange places. One time they found him on top of the chicken coop belonging to the neighbors. One time they found him across town on a swing, just happily swinging. And this was obviously very troubling, as you can imagine. The horror that you feel when you can't when Martin's parents talked about him to each other, his father felt that he was just a normal boy, nothing wrong with him. But his mother did not agree. She knew that something just wasn't right with him, and she was really feeling it being his primary caregiver. She was stressed to no end by him. Now, there is a lot of information here, so I am going to be referring to my notes, which are on my right side here a bit. Otherwise, I'm surely going to leave out important information. Okay. So, when he started elementary school, that is when things became very apparent. It was clear at that point that he had both social and academic problems. And he was getting a lot of rejection from the other kids, leading to a lot of solitude for him. Nobody really wanted to be his friend. And he did not quite get it. Now, one classmate said this of him. He used to walk around with his face all squinted up as if the sun was too bright. And they said that he would do very annoying things like run up behind kids and just jump on top of their back to try to be friendly. And they just could not tolerate that. He wound up getting bullied a lot, but he was bullying them right back at the same time. A teacher described him as being distant from reality, and he showed no emotion. He was very disruptive and violent at school, often getting in physical confrontations with other kids. He was suspended from school at only 10 years old, and at that time it was also found out that he was torturing animals. Now, he did wind up returning to school the following year, but nothing was improved at all. The bullying and the being bullied persisted, and so he was transferred to a special education school. And it was said that at that point, his behavior and his academics started deteriorating even more. For Martin's 14th birthday, his father bought him an air rifle, which was definitely a bad idea in retrospect, because this is what started off his interest in shooting. And he used to use that air rifle a lot. He used to hide in a creek bed near their house and fire at passing traffic or wildly out into the bay. And there was even a time when he shot a parrot in a tree and then found the dead parrot and just kept shooting it repetitively. So he wound up dropping out of school at age 16. And at that point, his father encouraged him to start working as a gardener, or start mowing lawns for the neighbors. Walk door to door, see who would want his services. So he began to do that a bit. And at the same time, his parents started worrying what was going to become of him. How was he ever going to lead a normal life with this kind of behavior? When he was around 16 or 17, his parents took him to a psychiatrist to assess him for a pension, because they knew that does a bit of gardening and watches TV. Only his parents' efforts prevent further deterioration. Could be schizophrenic, and parents face a bleak future with him. So that was what the psychiatrist said, and he started getting a pension. But it's interesting to note, it doesn't sound like he was given any kind of treatment to help improve his chances. But this is back in the early 80s. So things have probably changed. So anyway, when he was 19, as he was going door to door to offer his services, he met a woman named Helen Harvey. She was 54 years old, and she was the heiress to a lottery fortune. She lived in a mansion, but the mansion was in a state of disrepair, and it was a complete mess. But she hired him to start helping her out with the lawn and to care for her multitude of animals. She had 40 cats and 14 dogs. The cats lived in the garage, and the dogs lived in the house with her and her elderly mother. Now, Helen used to work an office job at the railway, but after her father died, leaving her a lot of money, she had quit that job and stayed home to take care of her mother. But you will see she did not really take very good care of her mother. But she was said to be very eccentric, but harmless. She was heavy-set, missing some teeth, had a body odor, and she wore old, dirty clothes. So, the two of them really liked each other's company quite a lot. They were both very, very different, very quirky, let's say. And they didn't feel judged by one another. So they became companions. Nothing sexual. Or so they say. I don't really think there was anything like that. But in 1990, somebody made a report to the health authorities about the state of Helen's house and all the animals. And when the authorities came, they found that both Helen and her mother, whose name was Hilsa, needed urgent hospital treatment. They were living in squalor, surrounded by roaming animals, unwashed dishes, mold everywhere. And the mother, Hilsa, she was 79. She had a broken hip that had been broken 2 years prior and was not treated. And she was just sitting in a kitchen chair, withering away. So they moved her to a nursing home, where she wound up dying the next month, sadly. And Helen was also in bad physical shape from her own living conditions, so she was hospitalized for a while. And during that time, it was demanded that her home be cleaned up and all the animals had to go. So Martin and his father, Maurice, took up the job of cleaning her house while she was in the hospital. Now, once she got out of the hospital, she invited Martin to move in with her, because now she was living alone. And so he did. Now, around that time, Martin was reassessed again for his pension. And this is like to go around shooting people, it would be unsafe to allow Martin out of his parents' control. End quote. So, the doctor was saying he is a threat to society, but so long as his parents are watching him, specifically his father, it should be okay. But in my opinion, requiring somebody's parents to watch them, that wouldn't make me feel safe from this guy, you know? Like, you can't guarantee what somebody's parents are going to do, you know, how closely they're going to supervise him. But that was how it went. So anyway, the house that Martin was living with Helen, they weren't allowed to bring animals into that house. So they decided to buy another house nearby. Well, Helen bought it because she was an heiress. And the two of them moved into a different house where they got a bunch of new animals. And they used to sleep late every day and then go out, roaming the town, shopping, going to restaurants. And they would bring a bunch of these animals with them and leave them in the car while they did whatever they were doing. So local residents would note that they would come up with a car full of dogs, cats, and mini ponies. And it was said that over the 3 years that followed, they purchased 30 cars. Like, they didn't keep all of them, but they just kept buying cars and selling cars and buying more cars. Just wild stuff. Now remember that air gun that Martin had? Well, he was using it quite a bit at their home, outside of their home. And neighbors recalled that Martin was a wild-eyed boy who loved firing his air rifle at tourists as they stopped to buy apples on the side of the road. So he continued to be quite a nuisance around town. I'm surprised he didn't get arrested for that, quite honestly. Now, another thing about Martin is that when he would go out with Helen in the car, she would drive because he didn't have a license, but he would, out of nowhere, grab the steering wheel from her and just wrench it to the side. Just for no reason. And she couldn't predict when he was going to do it. So she said she would drive much slower just to ensure their safety. But she continued to allow him in the car with her and their animals. And there were 2 occasions when she did get into a car accident because of this. Now, why did he do it? They said it wasn't because he was trying to hurt anyone, but rather it was just a silly, childish impulse for him to just do that, you know, and he couldn't understand what was wrong with doing that. Like, he just couldn't see the consequences. And then, one day, it was October 20th, 1992, and they were out driving, and we don't exactly know what happened, but the car got into a head-on collision, and Helen died, unfortunately, and Martin was very badly hurt, but he did survive. He did not admit to having played any part in the accident, but most people assume that it was his fault, that he probably grabbed the wheel like he had so many times in the past. So, she wound up leaving everything to him. All of her money and her houses and her property, everything. and his name is Maurice. Maurice was becoming more and more depressed. And one thing that had happened was he had wanted to buy a guest house, like a bed and breakfast, called the Seascape. And he was right up to the edge of actually getting it when another couple somehow wound up outbidding him in the last second, and they got the house and not him, and he was pretty upset about it. Now, sadly, in 1993, it was believed that Maurice took his own life. He was found in the water. It was a dam behind his house. He was found in there with a weight wrapped around him to hold him down. And he had possibly taken some pills as well. Martin showed no emotion when he found out about this, but he doesn't show much emotion in general. But a lot of people felt that he might have had something to do with it, but we don't know. It goes down as Maurice having taken his own life, officially. So now, Martin is without his supportive father, he is without his supportive companion, and he is basically alone. Living alone. Now, he did get some girlfriends, and one of them in 1994 was a young woman who he met because his mother and her mother went to church together, so they were set up. And at first, she really liked him. She thought he was nice and funny, and he was good looking, and he was rich. So she was happy with him for a little while, but then things started getting a little strange, to say the least. One thing that he did was he had shaved his chest to, quote, look more like a woman. And he went on a trip to Scandinavia and came back with a bunch of videos of humans and animals doing certain things that we won't talk about. Truly horrific. He was into watching that. And she said that it seemed he was attracted to men, specifically blonde surfers. And he had more than 200 teddy bears and dolls throughout his home. So they dated for about 8 months, and then they broke up. Now, he started traveling quite a lot since he had all this money, and he didn't have anything really to do with his time, so he was traveling all around the world, to the United States, throughout Europe, to Asia. And he said that his favorite part of all these trips was his time on the airplanes, because he would sit with people and he would have conversations. But we know those people were, trapped next to him, so they had no choice. But when he would arrive at his location, people were not interested in talking to him or spending time with him at all. Just the opposite. They were judging him, looking down on him, and all that. But it wasn't without reason. He just appeared very peculiar. For example, he was known to go to the local cafe wearing a gray linen suit and lizard skin shoes and a Panama hat. He would carry a briefcase and tell everyone that he had a job that paid $400. I can't remember if it was $400 a day or $400 a week or what, but he didn't even have a job, so it was a lie. Another outfit he often wore was an electric blue suit with flared trousers and a ruffled shirt. By 1995, he started to drink heavily, which made things even worse. Typically, in a day, he would drink half a bottle of Sambuca and a bottle of Bailey's Irish Cream, plus some port wine and other sweet dessert wines. Now, let's move to the date of the crime. So it was April 28th through 29th, 1996. And apparently he had been planning this for weeks. Now, I am not 100% clear on how he got the guns. I tried to find it somewhere in writing, but I could not. The only thing I can tell you is that in the movie Night Tram that I mentioned in the beginning, and I don't know if this is accurate, but they showed him going to a store. He had a suitcase full of money, like cash, and so whatever they said it would cost for these weapons, he had it. He's just like, here, how's this? And they're like, great. And he didn't have a license, but since he had cash, they were like, that's fine, and he was able to buy whatever he wanted. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. If you have information, let me know, because that is important. It is important to know how he got those, So anyway, so he had all these weapons in a giant duffel bag that he carried around with him for the crime. So first he went to that guest house, the one I mentioned earlier, the Seascape guest house. And he shot and killed the couple who owned it because he felt it was their fault that his father was so depressed and took his life. So after he finished that, he got back in his car, which was a car that he had gotten from Helen. It was a yellow Volvo. And he drove to the Port Arthur Historic Site, which is a tourist spot in Tasmania. It used to be a prison. And he went to the cafe there, and he had lunch. And after he finished eating, he set up a video camera on a table. He took out a semi-automatic rifle and began shooting patrons and staff. Within 15 seconds, he had fired 17 shots, killing 12 and wounding 10. He then walked to the other side of the shop and fired 12 more times, killing another 8 and wounding 2 more. He changed magazines, and then he left the shop and started shooting at people in the parking lot and from his car as he drove away, killing 4 more and wounding an additional 6. He then drove down the road 300 meters, where he saw a woman and her 2 children walking. He stopped and fired 2 shots, killing the woman and the child she was carrying. The older child ran away, but he followed her and shot her dead with a single shot. Next, he stole a he shot into the car and killed the woman. Then he drove off in the BMW with the man who became his hostage. And he returned to the Seascape guest house with his hostage. He set the BMW on fire, and he took the hostage inside of the house where the corpses of that couple, the first couple, were laying. Now the police arrived to try to negotiate with him. This went on for many hours, and the thing that he asked for was to be transported in an army helicopter to an airport. Now during these negotiations, he killed the hostage. Then, 18 hours later, it was the next morning, he set fire to the guest house and tried to escape. At which point, they finally caught him. And he had gotten hurt in the fire, so he was brought to the hospital for treatment. Now, eyewitnesses to this whole horrible scene described him as smiling and laughing the whole time, looking like a, quote, laughing maniacal fool. How horrible is this? Like, I can't even digest this. Anyway, he was examined by a psychiatrist at this point, and it was found that he was borderline mentally disabled. He had an IQ of 66, which is equivalent to an 11-year-old. And the psychiatrist said, quote, that he could be regarded as having shown a mixture of conduct disorder, attention deficit, hyperactivity, and a condition known as Asperger syndrome. I know we don't like to use that word anymore. I'm just quoting from this doctor. So, the doctor found that he was socially and intellectually impaired, and that he did not have schizophrenia or a mood disorder. And he said, quote, though Mr. Bryant was clearly a distressed and disturbed young man, he was not mentally ill. And the psychiatrist said that he was motivated to do this crime after hearing about the Dunblane Massacre in Ireland, which had occurred a month before this massacre. In this case, the killer had shot dead 16 students and one teacher, injured 15 others, and then took his own life. So, Martin had said that prior to hearing about that crime, he intended on just taking his own life. But when he heard about that, he had made his decision that he would carry out this horrible massacre instead. So, he was found competent to stand trial. And that was to begin in November of '96. He originally pled not guilty, but then he changed it to a plea of guilty. And he was given 35 life sentences plus 1,652 years in prison without the possibility of parole. And those sentences were to be served concurrently. And he smiled while the verdict was read. Now, for the first 8 months of his prison time, he was kept in solitary confinement, and he was held in a special suicide prevention unit. He stayed in custody for his own safety until November 2006. At that time, he was moved to a secure mental health unit, which had 35 beds and was for inmates with serious mental illness, and they had doctors, nurses, and other support workers there. And the inmates are not locked down, but they can come and go from their cells. He did attempt to take his life 2 times in 2007, but he survived. He also seriously assaulted 4 people while he was there, including striking a staff member over the head. He also attacked 3 government employees in 2014. Now, as of January 2022, he is housed in a maximum security prison, and an ex-prison staff member described him as a big baby who rarely speaks and is the laughing stock of the jail. He has a sweet tooth and is known to perform sexual favors in exchange for chocolate. Now, one good thing came out of this. One good thing, that is it. And that was the sweeping gun reform in Australia, which was enacted only 12 days after the massacre. So rapid-fire weapons were outlawed as part of the National Firearms Agreement. Approximately 650,000 assault weapons were bought back by the government at a cost of $230 million. Now, the program did not eliminate homicides by guns, but there has only been one other mass murder since they enacted this new law, and that was in 2018 at a property in Margaret River in Western Australia when 7 people were found dead. So that is finally it. It's a long case. So what do you think? Well, I will tell you some of my thoughts. It goes without doubt that my heart goes out to all of the victims. There are so many victims. Everyone who was killed, everyone who was wounded, everyone who was there, all the family of these people. Just that the list goes on and on. It is so awful to even imagine the scene. Now, what do I think about the gun reform that they enacted? I mean, I don't want to get stuck in a lot of politics, of course. But it does sound like it helped quite a lot. I mean, yes, people still have guns somehow, and people still kill others with guns. But they aren't having these mass murders, which is a very positive thing. Now, what about this guy, Martin Bryant? What can I say? Is he responsible for what he did? Yes. He had a lot of impairments, no doubt. But let's not assume that just because someone has the impairments that he has, that they should go out and commit a crime like this. There is no correlation between his disability and supervision from the government. Like, he needed to have been placed in a special group home, no doubt, based on what we have heard about him. I mean, for sure, if that psychiatrist could say that he wanted to shoot people and he needed his parents' supervision to not become violent like that, that's not okay. You can't just release a violent person to their parents. You cannot expect parents to hold that responsibility. It just doesn't make sense. He needed to go into a professional residence or go under some kind of serious care, not just have his parents watch him. Plus, his father died. So the person who had been identified as the one who was going to keep him from hurting people, he was gone. And nothing was put in place to protect Martin from himself and to protect everyone else from Martin. So although I do not feel badly for Martin, I'm not going to sit here and say boo-hoo, poor him. No way, no way. But this should not have happened. It just shouldn't have. Even if it was the 1990s, that's not like the 1700s, okay? They had to have had something. Somewhere, someone who could have provided supervision for a person like this. So, I am going to leave it there. Thank you very much to everyone who has joined me